Welcome to the Virtual Power Teams podcast, the #1 podcast for working remotely and building powerful virtual teams. My name is Ivanov, international keynote speaker and author of the book Virtual Power Teams, translated in 6 languages. Tune in every Tuesday for the very latest in virtual leadership, or visit my website peter-ivanov.com. How to maintain virtual engagement, particularly when you make decisions and strategic decisions. So in a virtual team and remote team, making decisions could be make or break for success. It matters what you have to decide. For example, when you have to set strategic goals for the teams, annual goal for the teams, you have to engage your team. If you do it top down, you reduce productivity. So here we'll be talking, how can you increase the engagement? How can you increase the involvement and the input from your team members? So in the end, it will transfer into commitment for getting results. And for example, the first tip is, if you have to make a strategic decision or you have to make a policy change that impact big number of your team members, you as a leader can write a blog. And you could list the topic that you have to make a decision for, and you could list couple of options, 1, 2, 3, 4 options, and give your first view, pros and cons, but without weighing, without giving any inclination, which is your preferred option. And then share it with your team and give them 24 hours to respond. And even if you have a multiple time zones, even if you have a global teams, within 24 hours, while ones are sleeping, the other will provide input. And ask them to give their argumentation. Ask them, if necessary, to add new options, but give their pros and cons towards. And you will see, if you have a platform for that, where people can comment and like the other comments, you will have a really lively debate. And you will, by the end of these 24 hours, the options which prevail, which have a strongest resonance, will come up further. It will be clear which are the preferred options. And then you need a meeting just to stamp it, just to make the decision within the team. And here, when making these decisions, again, back to the topic, virtual engagement, when making decisions, you have to be very clear. That's the second tip, about the expectations from your team members. So there are like 4 types of meetings. First time, and therefore, you need to clear the purpose of the meeting and the expectation of the participants. So the first type of meeting is the update meeting. Usually you do update meetings more to strengthen the relationships with the team, to check the progress, but also at the same time to strengthen the relationship. And here you have to make sure that everyone is expected to contribute with his, highlights, with his contributions, not in a big level of detail, that would be a waste of time. All the details come as a pre-read, but with the key milestones achieved. So that's the update meeting. That's probably the easiest, the lowest level of engagement and collaboration, but can still, if you ignore it, you're kind of losing gravity in your team. The second one is if you have to resolve a problem. So you have to brainstorm and resolve a problem. And if this is the purpose of your meeting, you have to be very clear what is the problem, and that everybody is expected to contribute. And here we could use tools like whiteboards and several online tools where people can put their input in parallel. They could think in advance, what's the problem, what would be their contribution. And you don't criticize. There are several rooms for brainstorming, but be clear on the purpose of the meeting and the expected level of contribution. The third one, raising the level of virtual engagement and collaboration at the same time, is when you have to make a decision, as we said. So in this case, list the decision in advance, give the options, and make sure that everyone is contributing with his arguments in advance. This is where online can give an advantage. And if you have a global team, you have following the SAN principle, people can contribute. And then the fourth level, the highest, is if you have to build, for example, a product roadmap, or you do product development. So you have combination between decision-making, problem-solving, and laying out strategic layout. So if this is the case, then you need an extra step. You have to have a very careful design of your online meeting in order to ensure that everyone contributes. It's not sufficient just to have a whiteboard, and even some people ignore it, and the boss would tell his opinion first and kind of preempt the others for contributing. Here, you need to, with your leadership team, you need to see what is the best flow for the meeting in order to arrive at this strategic roadmap, if this is your goal. So here you have to plan sessions for individual contributions, for more introverted persons in your team. And you could do this in a breakout rooms and whiteboard where people individually contribute. You have to plan for some smaller groups. So you break down logical parts and assign it to the smaller groups in a breakout rooms, which they will work there and come back to the whole team. And then you have to have a very well designed process in the end, everyone together to decide. You could use voting principles. You have in the online tools, very good tools to kind of stamp and vote, and you could very quickly, much faster than live if you are in the same room, to see which of the suggested topics get the strongest resonance. So design of your meeting in the flow is key. And if you are not, as a leader, very talented moderator, you need to do it with your team. Somebody in the team has a strength of designing. It's like pedagogical background. So make sure you have the right design to arrive at the solution. The other one is, in fact, I will just end with the last point for today, with the last tip, and it is so-called the 5-minute rule. So online, people have a lot of distractions. It is sufficient if you feel not so much engaged, you just look at an email box and you jump and dive into another universe. Or you check some website, or from home office, you could even put the Netflix if it's a very long update meeting and you don't have a role to play. So follow the 5-minute rules, which never go longer as a leader, as a moderator, more than 5 minutes without assigning the group with a new problem to solve. So if you have something to cascade, if you have a model that will be applied and you clarify, don't go longer than 5 minutes. Give them the next problem, break them out in the breakout rooms with individual assignments, have the clear roles when they come back, who will present, who will capture the input digitally. So they come back with their suggestions, and you will have a much more productive meeting. In the end, you will do less, but the people will feel more engaged, and the outcome of it will be much more their deliverables related to their problems in their time zones, in their countries, and so on. So those were the 4 tips to engage people into the virtual setup, particularly when making decisions. Let me repeat just once again. Write a block, list the options, give them 24 hours to respond. For the product roadmap, get together in advance. Ideally, have it like twice a year, every 6 months, and 6 weeks in advance, you get together and design the flow of the meeting, very key, so you could arrive at your solution. Then have a very clear expectation on the contribution of your team members, communicate in advance, and then have the 5-minute rules, which is don't speak longer than 5 minutes before you give them a problem to solve. Hope this helps for you to build your virtual power team. Big virtual power hug from me, Peter Ivanov, and I see you next week.